The Sato family had a well-known peculiarity. For 18 generations, there had only ever been a single son to carry on the name. Concerned this tradition might end with me, my father took a unique approach. He adopted 3 young women, making it publicly known that whichever of them I married and had a child with would ensure her offspring inherited the vast family fortune. It was a strange, almost archaic arrangement, and everyone seemed to believe that the true heir to the Sato legacy would come from one of these 3 candidates my father had selected for me. The peculiar thing was, not one of them ever met my gaze. I had been in love with Hana for years, a quiet, persistent affection that was met with nothing but her endless supply of cold, dismissive looks. For a long time I convinced myself that she was simply a reserved person, that her coolness was just a part of her nature, and that she treated everyone with the same distant courtesy. That illusion shattered the day I saw her with Ren, the driver's son. She was leaning into him, her expression soft and unguarded in a way I had never seen, and I heard her swear to him with a sincerity that struck me like a physical blow. "I'm only agreeing to marry him to repay the Sato family for raising me," she had whispered, her voice full of a tenderness she never showed me. "As soon as I give birth to the Sato heir, I'll file for a divorce and we can finally be together. I'll make sure Kenji doesn't hurt you. I can get him to give you a few million to live comfortably abroad. You're the only one who will ever be my real husband." The day before the final board meeting, where my choice was to be announced, my father called me into his study. He asked me plainly which of the 3 women I had decided to marry. My mind flashed with images of Hana, Yumi, and Emi, the way they always averted their eyes, the subtle way they would angle their bodies away from me in any room. The memory of Hana's words to Ren was still a fresh wound. I managed a calm smile as I gave him my answer. "I am the heir to the Sato family," I said, my voice steady. "It follows that my marriage should be the one that brings the most significant advantage to our enterprise." I paused, then continued, "I've decided on Akira Takahashi from City A." My father's brow furrowed in confusion. Akira Takahashi? But she was paralyzed in that car accident 5 years ago. She's not just disabled, Kenji. The doctors confirmed she's also unable to have children. Are you certain about this? I spoke gently, but with a firmness that left no room for debate. In the circles we move in, genuine love is a rare commodity. Since this is ultimately a transaction of interests, it only makes sense to choose the family with the most substantial assets to offer. The Takahashi family. While Akira may be paralyzed and infertile, modern medicine offers solutions. Children can still be conceived through egg retrieval and in vitro fertilization. She is the sole heiress to the Takahashi fortune. Instead of relying on the adopted daughters you brought into our home, wouldn't it be far wiser to form an unbreakable alliance with a family as powerful as our own? My father considered my words, his expression slowly clearing as he nodded in agreement. "If they failed to win your affection, then there is no longer a reason for them to remain in the Sato household." I knew that if I had confessed the real reason, that Hana didn't love me and I couldn't bear to force her into a loveless marriage, my father would have summoned her immediately. He would have used the years of kindness and provision as a weapon, demanding to know what right an adopted girl had to refuse his son. I didn't want that for her. I didn't want to coerce her into a life with me, and I certainly didn't want us to become a resentful couple, trapped together by obligation. Hearing what she had said to Ren had extinguished the last embers of my hope. Letting her go was the final act of kindness I could offer. As I left the study, my father shot a sharp, appraising glance in Hana's direction. After she politely saw him off, she turned to me, her brow creased with irritation. "What did you tell him this time?" she asked, her eyes filled with a familiar disgust, as if my very presence was an offense. Before I could form a reply, Yumi chimed in with a sneer. "It was probably about what we said, wasn't it? That we aren't fawning all over him like desperate fools." Emi followed up, her voice dripping with contempt. "Honestly, Master Kenji, this isn't some ancient feudal dynasty. Do you really believe that having a little money makes you an emperor that everyone should revolve around?" The three of them stood united, their words like sharp little daggers aimed directly at my chest. I was genuinely perplexed by their attitude. "None of you want to marry me," I stated, more a fact than a question. "So why did none of you ever simply say so to my father?" While my father had certainly hoped I would fall for one of them, he never would have forced a marriage. If any one of them had just said no, he would have respected their wishes, set aside a generous fund for them, and allowed them to go abroad and live their lives freely. But looking at them then, I understood. They couldn't bring themselves to let go of the immense fortune the Sato family represented. Emi, always the most hot-tempered, clicked her tongue impatiently. "Oh, please, you make it sound so easy. You know perfectly well we're living under someone else's charity. We're just pets to the Sato family. What right do we have to refuse anything?" Hana's gaze was complicated as she looked at me. "If you intend to choose me, then do it. I only ask that you don't make life difficult for the other two in the future." Her words made Emi and Yumi look at her with expressions of moved gratitude. Watching Hana's display of self-sacrifice, a bitter cold spread through my chest. Before I could respond, Ren suddenly appeared from a nearby corridor. The moment his eyes landed on me, he feigned a look of shock and instinctively ducked behind Hana for protection. He was a grown man, yet he consistently positioned himself as someone who needed a woman to shield him. Hana, true to form, stepped protectively in front of him. "He's done nothing wrong. Just let him be for today, please." I looked at the scene before me, a wave of confusion washing over me as I realized that the three women who were supposedly my potential partners were all arrayed against me, shielding Ren as if I were some kind of predator about to strike. They saw themselves as strong, independent women and clearly disliked my confident, direct personality. Instead, they were drawn to Ren, a man who was my inferior in every measurable way. I remembered an incident from 5 years ago, shortly after Ren first came to live at our residence. He had given me a simple watch as a gift. To show my appreciation, I had returned the favor with a tailored suit that cost 100,000 yuan. But the moment I fastened the watch to my wrist, Hana snatched it away from me. "That's his mother's heirloom," she had snapped. "Are you going to take that from him, too?" I looked at Ren, baffled, expecting him to clarify that he had given it to me willingly. Instead, he dropped to his knees with a pained, pitiful expression. "Young master didn't take it from me. I gave it to him myself," he said, his voice trembling. "Young master has been very kind to me. He even gave me this expensive suit. I'm not wronged at all, truly." He then proceeded to kowtow toward me, again and again. The dramatic display deeply affected the three women, who saw in his performance a reflection of their own precarious positions within our household. They immediately began to question me indignantly. "So, what if you're the eldest young master of the Sato family? That doesn't give you the right to force someone to give you their mother's most precious memento, does it?" another had said. "A cheap watch might not be worth much money, but its sentimental value is worth more than any suit." "You should give it back to him right now," said the third. Their words blended into a chorus of accusation. "You're always so arrogant, doing whatever you please without any regard for how others feel." My face had darkened with anger, but I believed it was all a misunderstanding that could be cleared up later. Swallowing my pride, I held the watch out to Ren. He fumbled as he took it, and it fell to the marble floor, shattering. He stared at me with wide, accusing eyes and shouted, If you would rather destroy it than return it, why did you even pretend? Hana, who always had a soft spot for what she perceived as the downtrodden, immediately delivered an ultimatum. Apologize to Ren this instant, or I will call off our engagement. At that time, I had already confessed my feelings to her and told her I wanted to marry only her. She used that knowledge as leverage, forcing me to bow my head to Ren. I was younger then, and terrified of losing the woman I loved. Through red-rimmed eyes, I mumbled an apology without ever defending myself. That apology had haunted me for 5 years. Ever since that day, whenever Ren saw me, he would act like a mouse seeing a cat, either collapsing to his knees or bursting into tears, even though I had done absolutely nothing to him. I looked coldly at Hana now. If you're so terrified that I'll bully Ren, perhaps you should tie him to your belt and keep him there permanently. My words were dripping with sarcasm, but Hana's brow only furrowed in earnest concern. Are you threatening me? What are you planning to do to him? Emmy clapped her hands together. Don't tell me you're just angry because we gave the Starlight Grotto to Ren, and now you're using this as an excuse to take it out on him. Yumi looked at me, her eyes like ice. You already have everything in the world. Ren has never even had a proper birthday celebration. It's just an aquarium. Do you really need to make such a fuss over it? My gaze sharpened. The Starlight Grotto. It was a massive, state-of-the-art underground aquarium that had been under construction since the day I was born. On its southeastern wall was a huge, rare piece of imperial jade that, under the shimmering light of the seawater, refracted light into a pattern that looked like a brilliant galaxy. The project had been completed 6 months ago, and my father had entrusted Hana with overseeing the final stages. The plan was for her to present it to me as a gift at my upcoming birthday banquet. And now, I was learning that this deeply personal gift, which was rightfully mine, had been given to Ren. I turned my gaze to Hana. She was the one in charge of the project. Without her approval, no one could have accessed the still unopened facility. Under my intense stare, she grew visibly uncomfortable and looked away, annoyed. Ren grew up in the countryside, she said defensively. He was always too busy with chores to ever really see the stars. I just wanted to help him fulfill a small dream. Besides, the aquarium is still legally your property, isn't it? Stop being so unreasonable. She took a breath, as if making a great concession. Fine. At your birthday banquet next month, I will publicly announce our engagement. Will that finally make you happy? Seeing her act as if she were doing me a colossal favor, I almost had to wonder if I was the one who had been adopted into this family. Yet no one else in the room seemed to find anything strange about her statement. Instead, they all looked at Hana with pity. Why would you sacrifice so much for him? Kenji is arrogant, domineering, and cruel. You'd be better off becoming a nun than marrying a man like that. He's probably so ecstatic right now he can't even think straight. He's finally getting what he's always wanted. Ren looked at Hana with tears in his eyes. Hana, please don't ruin your life because of me. If it will help, I'll kneel and kowtow to young Master Sato. I'll be his servant. I'll do anything. A dryness filled my throat. I managed to force out a single, quiet sentence. I will not marry you. Hana raised her eyebrows, a flicker of surprise and suspicion in her eyes. Emmy and Yumi exchanged nervous glances, as if they were suddenly afraid my attention would turn to one of them. Being rejected so thoroughly by the 3 women who had grown up alongside me, I felt a surge of anger and frustration. I feared that if I didn't leave right then, I might do something I would later regret. I turned to walk away, only to feel Ren's hand yank at my wrist. His eyes were red with unshed tears, and once again he collapsed to his knees with a look of profound humiliation. Please, don't make things difficult for Hana, he pleaded. All 3 of them were adopted by the Sato family. They've always had a lower status here. If you're angry that they gave me the Starlight Grotto, and you're planning to complain to Mr. Sato, I'm willing to apologize with my own forehead." With that, he began to slam his head against the polished floor. Bang, 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 until his skin was red and beginning to bleed. Hana, her heart clearly aching at the sight, rushed to pull him up from the ground. She then turned and glared at me. "You say you won't marry me? Then fine, don't choose me. What is the point of all this reverse psychology just to torment Ren? Isn't this just your way of getting back at him and trying to force him out of the Sato household?" I stared at her, my expression cold. "I have no idea what you're talking about, but you can rest assured I will never choose you to be my wife." I thought that would be the end of it. To my surprise, she grabbed my arm. "If not me, then who? Yumi? Emi? Emi wants to study art overseas, and Yumi has always longed for her freedom. Isn't hurting me enough for you? Do you have to ruin their lives as well?" She took a deep, steadying breath. "If you promise not to make things difficult for Ren again, I'll marry you. Just stop all of this, please." Her eyes were filled with a deep exhaustion, as if I had been the one tormenting her for years on end. I looked at her, my gaze deep and unreadable, and said, "Everything will proceed exactly as you wish." She feared I would bully Ren, and she didn't want to marry me. Once I married Akira, all of her worries would simply vanish. In the time leading up to my birthday, I didn't see Hana again. It wasn't until the day of the banquet that she finally appeared, her face a mask of cold indifference. Yumi and Emi trailed behind her, their expressions equally grim. I frowned at my assistant. I had been very clear that the engagement announcement that day had nothing to do with them, and that there was no reason to invite them. He shook his head frantically, silently communicating that they had come on their own. I sighed and decided to ignore their presence. The guests gathered below, however, were more enthusiastic, greeting the three women one after another. "Miss Hana, you're truly a rising star in the business world. That project you closed last month must have brought in at least $1 million, surely. It's no wonder young Master Sato has eyes only for you." In truth, I had been the one to negotiate that entire deal. Hana had merely been present to sign the final documents. "Miss Emi may be hot-tempered, but she has such a strong sense of justice. Young Master Sato would never suffer with you as his wife." I scoffed silently at that. Emi had bullied me more than anyone, seeing me as the embodiment of evil, likely wishing she could set me on fire. "Miss Yumi is also quite a beauty. Young Master Sato couldn't possibly go wrong by choosing you either. Please take good care of him in the future." The three of them, at my own birthday banquet, were acting like the hosts, soaking in the attention and the spotlight. I frowned, about to step in and put an end to the charade, when all three of them suddenly looked down at their phones. Before I could react, Emi's face went white with rage. She rushed toward me and slapped me hard across the face. My head spun from the force of the blow, and I stumbled back, nearly falling. The entire room went silent as the guests quickly backed away, wanting no part in the unfolding drama. Hana clenched her fists and managed to hold back Emi, who looked ready to strike me again. Then Hana turned to me, her eyes blazing with fury. "We already came here today, displayed like items on a shelf for you to choose from. What more could you possibly want? Did you have to push Ren to his death too?" I was completely lost. Seeing my confusion only deepened Yumi's disdain. "You waited until none of us were around and then you dared to have Ren kidnapped. I'm telling you right now, Kenji, it won't work." As soon as she spoke, I realized Ren had orchestrated another one of his manipulative tricks. All the guests present were either friends of my father or important business partners. Yet even after I was publicly slapped, not a single person intervened. My heart grew cold. They must have already decided that the Sato family fortune was not destined for my hands, and so they didn't dare offend the three women who they believed held the real power. Covering my stinging cheek, I stared at Emmy with icy eyes. "Apologize?" She glanced at my reddened face and sneered. "Ren was nearly beaten half to death, and you're upset about a single slap?" I'm fine." Just then, Ren limped into the room. His clothes were torn, his face was a mess of bruises and cuts, and he was covered in dirt. One look at him and anyone would assume something terrible had just happened. Quick as a flash, Hana took off her expensive coat and draped it over his shoulders. Then she turned to glare at me with utter disgust. "You are as scheming and cruel as ever. I will never marry a man like you." Yumi, who was usually the quietest of the three, stepped in front of Ren with a frosty expression. "Your family has a weak bloodline, so you brought us here to be your breeders, to have children and carry on the Sato name. We had already accepted our fate, but you still weren't satisfied." She turned on her heel and walked away without a second glance, showing no regard for the family's dignity. Before walking out, Hana threw one last haughty line over her shoulder. "I'll marry you, but once the child is born, you will be nothing more than a decoration in this house. If you want my child to protect the Sato family's legacy, you had better learn to behave." I almost chuckled. Had they completely forgotten? Without me, the Sato family would never have adopted them in the first place. As the three of them were about to leave, someone from the staff finally tried to stop them, but I shouted, my face cold with fury, "Let them go!" Ren shot me a sidelong glance, his eyes full of smug defiance, as if he had just won a great victory. I stood there in the echoing silence, saying nothing, until my panicked assistant rushed to my side. "What should we do now? All three of them have left. Who are you going to choose?" Other guests began to frown as well, murmuring amongst themselves. "The Sato family bloodline is thin. He has to marry and have children eventually to secure the inheritance. If even the three women who know him best refuse to have him, who else will—" I nearly laughed out loud at their short-sightedness. There are millions of women in the world. Whoever said I had to marry one of those three? With a confident smile, I raised my wine glass and addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, today is not only my birthday, it is also my engagement party." On the giant projector screen behind me, an image appeared. It was the face of a woman, cold but stunningly beautiful. A collective gasp went through the room. "Isn't that Akira Takahashi from the Takahashi family in City A?" someone whispered. My father, having just concluded a deal worth over 100 million, stepped forward with a broad, beaming smile. "That's right," he announced proudly. "For my son's bride, only the most outstanding woman is worthy. As for those three girls, I only adopted them because they were pitiful orphans with no family. The idea that my son would choose one of them to marry was always utter nonsense." Even with my father's clear statement, the guests still wore expressions of skepticism. A few of his older friends approached him, trying to reason with him. Akira from City A is undeniably capable, but that terrible accident years ago, one began. "Exactly," another added. "Everyone knows Akira is now infertile and paralyzed. If your son marries her, she won't be able to provide an heir. Who will inherit the family fortune then? We don't believe the children from the other three could necessarily handle the Sato legacy, but at least choose someone who can have children." They politely called Akira a noble heiress, but their underlying meaning was clear. She was just a disabled woman. Everyone assumed her immense wealth would eventually be handed over to someone else. So why, I wondered, couldn't that someone else be me? From the moment I overheard Hana's conversation with Ren, I realized that despite being the sole biological heir of the Sato family, no one truly believed the family's fortune would ultimately land in my hands. So I decided, Why not choose a woman who is both powerful enough to be an asset and, in their eyes, incapable of ever taking the Sato family away from me? Meanwhile, Hana was busy comforting the still-shaken Ren when she glanced at a message on her phone. Her expression darkened instantly. "Come back right now. Kenji just announced his fiancée. You'll regret it if you don't." Emi and Yumi received similar messages from mutual friends. Hana's first instinct was to turn off her phone and ignore it, but a nagging question lingered. Why would her friend say she'd regret it? Could it be that Kenji had chosen Emi or Yumi? She stared at the other two women for a long moment before finally typing a reply. Who did Kenji choose? When the answer came back with a photo attached, Hana's pupils contracted in shock. Her face went pale with disbelief. At the same time, Emi and Yumi both gasped. "No way! Kenji picked that infertile, paralyzed cripple? Impossible!" Ren, still leaning on Hana's shoulder, had a flicker of triumph in his eyes, though his words were laced with false concern. "Maybe young master is just angry. You all left his birthday party because of me. He must have been upset. Why don't you go back? I'll be fine on my own." Tears welled in his eyes as he spoke, and the three women immediately softened. Emi, straightforward as ever, declared, "It's not like Kenji hasn't pulled stunts like this before. I want to see if he really goes through with marrying that cripple. Just you wait. He'll be the one on his knees, begging us to marry him." Hana felt a bit more reassured by that. She was right. Kenji had pursued her for years, his affection unwavering no matter how many times she pushed him away. Missing one birthday party wouldn't suddenly make him turn around and marry someone who couldn't even give him children. Ren's eyes remained fixed on Hana. Seeing her silent contemplation, a hint of jealousy flashed across his gaze. He said miserably, "I must be the one standing in young master's way. Even if he had me beaten and crippled, I still shouldn't have barged into his party and ruined everything. What if he tells Mr. Sato and has all your living expenses cut off? I don't want to be the one to drag you all down." The three women's expressions darkened instantly. The thing they hated most was being reminded that they were living on someone else's charity. Emi said coldly, "I've got 2 working hands and feet. Even if I lose the allowance, I'll survive." Hana gently stroked Ren's hand to reassure him. "Don't worry. Kenji can't manage such a big empire all by himself. He can't even produce an heir. Sooner or later, he'll have to come begging for one of us to come back and help run the company. Don't talk about dragging us down. Kenji is the one at fault here. If he hadn't had such malicious intentions toward you, today wouldn't have turned into such a disaster for him." They saw the day's events as a simple loss of face for me, never considering the long-term consequences. Growing restless, Hana finally picked up her phone and sent me a message. "You went too far today. There's no need to throw a tantrum and marry a cripple who can't have children. As long as you apologize to Ren, I'll marry you." In her mind, she pictured the look of joy on my face when I read her words. But the moment she saw the red exclamation mark appear next to her message, her smile froze. I hadn't just deleted her number. I had blocked her completely. In the second half of the birthday banquet, dozens of helicopters flew in formation overhead, raining down millions of dollars worth of pink roses from the sky. Amid that fragrant sea of flowers, the elegant and icy-faced Akira was gently wheeled out of one of the helicopters. She began to make her way toward me, down a red carpet, her eyes, for the first time, brimming with warmth. My father's eyes widened in shock. How is she here?" he murmured. The other guests were just as confused, though they still saw Akira as nothing more than a paralyzed and infertile woman. They couldn't deny her status. She was the sole heiress of the powerful Takahashi family in City A, a true socialite, the genuine daughter of a noble house. If it weren't for her family's insistence on marrying into a family of equal or greater standing, Akira would have been married countless times over the past few years. After all, the Takahashi family was old money, prestigious and deeply rooted, while the Sato family, in comparison, had only risen to prominence in the last few decades. We were wealthy, but we lacked their heritage. Everyone in the room assumed that if I married Akira, I would be nothing more than a figurehead, and that the Takahashi family would never truly value the engagement. As the crowd murmured and speculated, Akira smiled and spoke, her voice clear and carrying across the garden. "How could the leading lady be absent from her own engagement party?" she asked rhetorically. "I'm not too late, am I?" She held out a stunning bouquet of air-shipped Bulgarian roses and presented them to me. She stood there, holding the bouquet until I accepted it. I didn't leave her waiting. I smiled and took the roses from her hands. "You arrived just in time," I said. The frost that had seemed permanently etched between her brows suddenly melted away. For the first time, she showed a genuine warmth to the world. This public display of affection shocked the crowd. Before her accident, Akira had been known as a cold beauty. After the accident, she had become even more aloof, so much so that she had once thrown her own father out of her house without hesitation. Just as my fingers clasped Akira's right hand, Hana reappeared at the entrance to the garden, her expression cold and hard. Her return caused a new stir among the guests. Is Hana having second thoughts? She probably just lost her temper earlier. Now that she's calmed down, she's come back. Hana and young Master Sato practically grew up together. If she shows him just a little bit of softness, he'll probably call off this Takahashi engagement in a heartbeat. Before I could say a word, I felt Akira's grip on my hand tighten. Her expression remained calm, but I could feel a storm hidden just beneath the surface in her eyes. The moment Hana met Akira's gaze, she sensed a palpable danger. Still, she braced herself and spoke. "Forgive him. Young Master Sato has always been willful. If he said anything that caused a misunderstanding, I hope you won't take it to heart." She reached a hand out toward me, a silent signal for me to stop my little performance. Akira's face turned instantly cold. "And who are you?" she asked. For years, Hana had often been the public face of the Sato family at various events. As someone who was also active in the business world, there was no possibility that Akira didn't know exactly who Hana was. Everyone understood what was happening. Akira was deliberately and publicly putting Hana in her place. Hana opened her mouth, ready to declare that she was my fiancé. But when her gaze fell on our joined hands, the words caught in her throat. She remembered her actual position. She was merely an adopted daughter of the Sato family. Nothing more. Akira's tone became mocking. "If you are speaking to me as an adopted daughter of the Sato family, then I'm afraid you are not qualified to do so." Hana's face went pale, but she stubbornly turned her attention to me. "Kenji?" she asked, her voice tight. "Are you really going to throw away your future over a fit of anger?" Her fists were clenched so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. After all the years I had spent observing her, I could see she was panicking. But why? Was it because I was marrying Akira? Or was it because she was afraid that the Sato family fortune would no longer be within her grasp? I looked at her and offered a faint smile. "Akira and I are in love. What anger are you talking about? Our engagement has been set for a long time. Are you here to crash our party?" I deliberately used the phrase, "crash our party," and Hana instantly retorted, "Why would I crash the party? She stopped, her face turning livid as she gritted her teeth. "I just can't stand by and watch you toy with the Takahashi family's reputation. If you regret this later, the entire Sato family will suffer the consequences." At that, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. You don't need to worry yourself about that. After all, your surname is Lee. When the three girls were first adopted, Hana Lee had insisted on keeping her own surname, not wanting to take ours. My father hadn't forced the issue, so he simply let it be. Only then did Hana finally seem to look at my face properly. The eyes that had once overflowed with warmth and affection for her were now filled with a cold frost, as if I wanted nothing more than to be rid of her then and there. Seeing me draw such a firm and undeniable line between us, Akira's heart seemed to warm. She tightened her grip on my hand again, as if she were afraid of losing me. Hana's throat felt dry. After a moment's hesitation, she asked again, "You're really going to marry Akira?" "Hana, who gave you the right to keep pestering Kenji?" My father's authoritative voice rang out from behind her. He strode over to stand beside me, his eyes locked sharply onto her. Hana's posture seemed to shrink under his gaze. She no longer had the courage to speak. "I'm sorry." In my father's presence, she always seemed to feel inherently inferior. She had been adopted, taken in, given charity. I looked at Hana's familiar, humbled expression, but this time, unlike all the times before, I felt no urge to comfort her. In the past, I would have patiently reassured her, again and again, that my father was only strict with her because he valued her so highly. I would have told her that in the Sato family, she was never lesser than anyone else. I had promised her that one day she would control more company shares than I would, and that her child would inherit everything. But all the fine clothes, the luxury, and the protection my father and I had given her still couldn't compare to a single, ambiguous, pity-filled comment from Ren. All it took was Ren pitifully saying, "We're both just outsiders here, Hana. I understand how hard it's been for you." And she would immediately turn resentful toward the family that had given her everything. Her gaze drifted between Akira and me before she finally managed a tight-lipped smile and said to my father, "I was being inconsiderate. Today is Kenji's birthday and his engagement party. I haven't even had the chance to give my blessing yet." She lifted her glass, her eyes looking at me with a desperate hope. Before I could react, Akira reached out and gently blocked the toast. "Kenji doesn't like to drink," she said smoothly. "I'll take this one for him." She raised her own glass and downed the champagne in one go, a light, attractive blush blooming on her beautiful face. Hana's face went even paler at Akira's casual, confident declaration of ownership. Suddenly, she seemed to remember all the times at business dinners that I had shielded her from having to drink, always taking her share. Regret, belated and overwhelming, flooded her heart. Her eyes rimmed with red, Hana gave a bitter smile, took 2 steps back, and turned to leave. After the banquet finally ended, Akira tilted her head and looked up at me. "Is my fiancé not going to take me home tonight?" I blinked. "What?" Akira stared at me for a long moment before speaking again, her tone now slightly downcast. "You don't want to take me home? I understand. I know I'm just a cripple. It's normal if you find me repulsive." What she was saying completely clashed with the powerful, aloof persona I had always heard about. Still, I instinctively moved to comfort her. "No, that's not it. I don't mind at all. It was my oversight. You came all this way from City A. Of course I should have arranged for your accommodations." Akira's assistant, standing nearby, rolled her eyes and turned away, clearly fed up with her boss's transparently scheming act. Akira tugged at the sleeve of my jacket, her voice soft and expectant. "You really don't mind that I'm disabled?" My gaze fell to her legs in the wheelchair. I nodded. Then my eyes involuntarily drifted a little higher. So pale. What are you looking at? My face flushed instantly, and I quickly averted my gaze. I didn't mean to. It doesn't bother me either way. We can always use IVF. Akira gently squeezed my hand. But why would we need IVF? She asked, her tone innocent. I stammered, not knowing how to answer. She sighed. Having a baby is something that's worth doing personally. My eyes widened as I stared at her in disbelief. Was she saying she could? Akira gripped the armrests of her wheelchair and with a smooth motion slowly stood up. Even on her feet, she only came up to my chest, cautiously, as if testing her balance. She stepped forward and into my arms. I just injured my legs in the accident, she explained quietly against my chest. I've been almost fully recovered for the past 2 years. I only continue to use the chair because I often don't feel like walking. Everything else you've heard is just a rumor. I felt a wave of embarrassment, but I also realized something else. When she said she didn't feel like walking, it was just an excuse. After all, being publicly labeled as crippled would naturally make people, especially her business rivals, let down their guard around her. The thought sent a sudden chill down my spine. If Akira had designs on the Sato family fortune, wasn't I just walking straight into a trap? Her methods. No one could deny how dangerously clever they were. As a cold sweat broke out on my back, Akira tilted her head, her expression one of pure innocence. Are you cold? If so, let's go home. I nodded stiffly, my mind racing with this new information. Akira smiled sweetly and clasped a delicate crystal bead bracelet around my wrist. When I saw the bracelet, a jolt of recognition hit me. I asked reflexively, You were the one who saved me back then, weren't you? When I was 17, I had been kidnapped by one of my father's business enemies. There had been another girl abducted and held in the same place with me. My legs had been broken, and I couldn't run. It was that girl who had saved me, hiding me inside a large discarded paint drum just before our captors came back. Much later, it was Hana who found me. To be precise, she was just the one who happened to open the lid of the drum I was hiding in. The police, my father, and many others were all there at the scene. But in that moment of relief and confusion, my 17-year-old mind had latched onto her face. From that day forward, I developed a deep sense of gratitude toward her, a feeling that slowly, over the years, blossomed into what I believed was love. But now, thinking back, I realized Hana hadn't saved me at all. Akira tapped her fingers on my arm, feigning displeasure. Yes, and you promised you would remember me forever. Then, the very next month, your whole family vanished from City A. You didn't even leave me a phone number. At the time, my father had been so terrified that I would be kidnapped again that he moved our entire family out of the city for good. I lowered my head, a wave of guilt washing over me. Akira leaned in again, curling into my chest. Forget it, she whispered. It wasn't your fault. It's Hana's fault. She's just too calculating. I smiled and hummed in agreement, completely unaware that Hana was hiding in a darkened corner of the garden, watching everything unfold. Her face was as pale as ash, her mind consumed by the image of Akira and me embracing. The way we looked into each other's eyes and smiled, it filled Hana with a jealousy so intense she felt she might lose her mind. Even if she would never admit it to herself, Hana did have feelings for me. She had relished my affection but hated the stigma of being an adopted daughter. So she had constantly looked down on me, rejecting me again and again, crushing my dignity with every dismissal. Hana stared at us bitterly, but didn't dare approach. Only when Akira and I walked away, hand in hand, up the stairs into the main house, did she finally move. Just then, her phone rang. It was Emmy, her voice frantic. Where did you go? Ren is missing again. He said he took a call from Kenji and then just disappeared. Kenji must have forced him to leave us. Hana frowned. He got a call from Kenji? She had been standing there in the garden the entire time. She hadn't seen me so much as touch my phone. Emmy huffed. Who else could it be? Ren said it himself. Kenji called him. Come help us look for him. If we wait any longer, Ren might be in danger again. Hana responded coldly. Just call the police. For the first time in 5 years, she didn't rush off to find Ren. Instead, her mind began to frantically review everything that had happened over the years. A terrifying suspicion began to take root. In silence, she dialed the police, and then she went to the villa's security office to check the surveillance footage herself. She reviewed every single timestamp where Ren had accused me of bullying him, only to find the complete opposite captured on video. The more she watched, the colder her heart grew. Suddenly, she clenched her fist and punched herself hard in the face, a sob escaping her lips. For all those years that Ren had lived in our home, all he ever had to do was claim I had bullied him, and the three of them would immediately force me to apologize, never once questioning his version of events. But now, the undeniable truth was playing out right in front of her. He had jumped into the pool himself. He had broken his own leg on purpose. He had torn his own clothes. He had thrown himself down the stairs. Lie after lie unraveled before her eyes. Hana said nothing. She turned and left the security room, having lost the courage to ever face me again. The next time I saw Hana was on the day of my wedding to Akira. Sitting in the car on the way to the ceremony, I caught a brief glimpse of several figures standing on a street corner. It was Hana, Yumi, and Emmy. They were no longer as glamorous as they once were, but they still held themselves with a cold, proud air. Ren was there too, clutching at Hana's hand, desperately begging her for something. When she ignored him, he turned his pleas to Yumi, but she wouldn't even look at him. Even Emmy, who had once been his most ardent supporter, shoved him away in disgust. A flicker of resentment passed through Ren's eyes. He tried to play his pitiful victim act one last time, but none of them gave in. I didn't recognize them at first, not until Hana's vacant stare drifted in my direction. Our eyes met for a fleeting moment, and then I knew it was them. I calmly looked away and never glanced back. After our engagement, my father had offered each of the 3 women a substantial sum of money. But they had voluntarily turned it down, insisting that they would find a way to repay him for the years he had spent raising them. I had to laugh when I heard about it. Over the years, their expenses and whims had cost the Sato family tens of millions. Now that they had left the shelter of our household, I had no idea how they planned to repay such a debt. When the fireworks show at our wedding, a display worth tens of millions, finally came to an end, Akira took my hand, and we walked down the red carpet together. Blessings and congratulations filled the air. At one point, someone handed me an unsigned letter. The handwriting was instantly familiar, and I knew who had written it. Without a change in my expression, I let the letter drop to the ground, where it was immediately trampled underfoot by the celebrating crowd. Akira kept smiling at me the whole time. As the ceremony ended, she placed a legal document in front of me. On it were the words, "I willingly transfer all my personal assets to my husband, Kenji Sato. No regrets, no reservations." The crowd erupted in shock. Even I stared at her in disbelief, but Akira just smiled gently at me. "Will you marry me?" she asked. I was so stunned I couldn't speak. In the end, Akira took my hand in hers and guided it to sign my name on the papers. She said, her voice full of conviction for all to hear, "I swear I will never hold anything back from the man I vow to spend my life with." Everyone who heard her knew she meant every single word. After our wedding, Akira committed herself to a rigorous physical therapy regimen. Within a remarkably short time, her legs were fully recovered, completely indistinguishable from anyone else's. I told her we could wait a few years before thinking about having children, but she broke through all my defenses and proved, with decisive action, that we wouldn't need IVF at all. In 3 years, we had 2 children, a boy and a girl, breaking the Sato family's 18-generation curse of single-heir succession. My father later told me that Hana and the other 2 had started a business overseas, but it had failed spectacularly, losing a huge sum of money before they disappeared. Ren, he heard, had been hit by a car and lost the use of his legs. With no money for proper treatment, he had moved back to the countryside and become a live-in husband to a fierce, abusive woman. Now, he was beaten daily and barely had enough food to eat. Even while they were struggling to survive abroad, the 3 of them, Hana included, still remembered to send me birthday gifts each year. I could tell they had put thought into them, but my expression always remained indifferent, completely unmoved by the gesture. It wasn't until I saw Akira walking toward me across the lawn, our 2 children holding her hands, that I finally let go of all that emotional baggage from the past. Only then did I smile, a real, genuine smile, because they were my happiness now.